Here's a pop quiz. Can you walk from 42nd Street in Times Square to 34th Street, Herald Square in New York City with your feet on backwards? Didn't think so. Because if you do, you might just be la Cigüapa, a Dominican mythological creature transplanted to New York City by las Dominicanas, who to me represent this card, la fuerza. I don't know if you can see it clearly, but you can see clearly my Her Story YouTube channel, Cronista de Indias. Salve, Divonauts, and welcome to Cronista de Indias, the Her Story YouTube channel by Dr. Andrea Lorena Fernandez. Esa soy yo. Please subscribe somewhere over here and follow on the Instagram. Check out the podcast Why Do We Read This on classics and pop culture. Links in the description. Thanks for supporting my research. In the last episode 27, we discussed the butterflies, the Mirabal sisters, Megalomania, and Santo Domingo's Obelisco Macho. We did an analysis of the Allegory of Freedom mural on Santo Domingo's male obelisk by Dustin Munoz. We also reviewed Patria, Minerva, Maria Teresa, and the de Mirabal in the context of Chicas Modernas theory, now applied to the Dominican Republic. And third, we discussed Megalomania, Fascism, and Gender in the Sea of Lentils theory by Antonio Benítez Rojo. This episode 28 is titled La Cigüapa, Dominicanas, Diaspora, and Community Development in New York City since 1965. We will study Dominican-American history from 1965 to the present. We will also discuss Dominicanas as protagonists of migration and discuss a poem by Josefina Baéz called La Cigüapa. Dominican-American history beginning in 1965. Why 65? I hinted at this in the previous episode on the Mirabal sisters. Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. I am quoting from the U.S. House of Representatives website. In a ceremony at the base of Statue of Liberty, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed that into law the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1965. Commonly known as the Hart-Celler Act, the law overruled America's immigration system during the period of deep global instability. You can read this as the USSR in fear of communism. For decades, a federal quota system had severely restricted the number of people from outside the Western Hemisphere eligible to settle in the United States. Passed at the height of the Cold War, the Hart-Celler Act erased America's long-standing policy of limiting immigration based on national origin. In its place, Congress erected a legal framework that prioritized highly skilled immigrants and opened the door for people with family already living in the United States. The popular bill passed the House 318 to 95 votes. The law capped the number of annual visas at 290,000, which included a restriction on 20,000 visas per country per year. But policymakers vastly underestimated the number of immigrants who would take advantage of the family reunification clause. In particular, the law created new opportunities for immigrants from Asian nations to join relatives in America. Following the Hart-Celler, annual immigration jumped by nearly 500,000 people, and only 20% came from Europe. For Dominicans, this meant that they were invited to live in the USA to lighten the load of poor people on the island, and thus preventing another Cuban revolution. The result? Spanish Harlem. Yes, the act was promoted in the Dominican Republic by President Joaquin Balaguer with USA support. He endorsed 1. Extrajudicial disappearances and murder of left-wingers, liberals, and commies. 2. Imprisonment and exile were common. 3. Undetermined civil liberties. 4. Human capital flight of intellectuals from the island. During this period, Dominican economic growth benefits the Criollo elite, who has special access to U.S. markets. The government controls sugar mills, leading to monoculture and the monopoly of the few. Additionally, U.S. investment in free trade zones also degrades the Dominican economy. IMF economic loans also do this. The socioeconomic polarization of the Dominican Republic is owed to growth of shanty towns outside of Santo Domingo, unemployment, no job generation, and U.S. passport issuing policies that encourage migration to prevent social unrest, like I said, the Cuban-style revolution. Since the publication of Doctora Ramona Hernandez and Antonio Steven Acevedo's article, Dominican Immigrants in Multicultural America, an encyclopedia of the newest Americans in 2001, we are talking of two distinct generations over the last 5 decades. That's five. The first generation is characterized by being part of community-based organizations like the Association of Dominican Bodega Owners, which currently has 7,000 registered bodegas owned by Dominicans, 4 billion annual in sales. Wow! The National Supermarket Association, with a membership of 400 Dominican ancestry owners and 2 billion in annual sales. Entrepreneurs are respected members of the community. They function as a nexus between the returnee business owners and Dominicans in the USA. The second generation are college-age students in record numbers. Check out City College, oh my God. They are young professionals and they are also millennials with iPhones. This would have never happened without the 1970s Bodega Revolution. At least that's what I call it as a her historian. Bodega Revolution. It's a pattern of community consolidation, appropriation of symbolic space in New York City. For example, Juan Pablo Duarte High School, which is PS 132, Salome Ureña Enriquez, which is IS 218, General Gregorio Luperón High School of Science and Mathematics, also Luis Belliard Grade School or PS 08, and lastly Juan Bosch Grade School in PS 178. Those are all New York City schools named after Dominicans, y'all! Ah! Another characteristic, aside from the high schools that are named after famous Dominicans of this Bodega Revolution, is the civic and cultural organizations like Alianza Dominicana, Centro de Desarrollo de la Mujer Dominicana, Asociación Comunal de Dominicanos Progresistas. For example, Ana Monción and Normandía Maldonado back in the day in the 60s held their first meetings of Instituto Duartiano in their Washington Heights apartments back in 1966. This is important. Dominican community-based organizations are matriarchies since the beginning, 1966, 1 year after the Immigration and Nationality Act. This is not an accident, y'all. Let's move over to the 1980s, which is characterized by politicization, like legal issues in the community, interaction with elected officials, and they tend to capitalize on social economic programs created by previous immigrant groups, becoming their own political voice. Women are movers and shakers in these communities, though men hold the highest positions in power. They're the ones doing the hard work. They accommodate to host society, preserve cultural and historical legacy, and they're cultural organizations that become community service agencies. Literacy, activism, conferences, commercial advertisement, flyers, they run it all. In the 1990s, immigration peaks. 15% of all immigrants to the USA moved to New York City, mostly Caribbean, Central, and South American. That's me. Moving in with 900,000 Puerto Ricans in New York City since 1950s actually was an advantage. Dominicans also, during the 1990s, have the highest fertility rate in New York City. They arrive in a politically established community, making assimilation easier, or even perhaps harder. Tell me in the comments. I don't know what you think. Is it harder when you get here and like all the Boricuas got here yet already? I don't know. You tell me. The 2000s are characterized by massive internal migration of Dominicans in the diaspora within the United States. They start in New York City, but soon they go over to New Jersey, Florida, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. They see education as the best credential in the job market. As of 2020, City College of New York's 16,000 strong student population, nearly 6,000 are Latinx. While City College of New York's demographics makes no distinction between Latinx, I can tell you from my own experiences teaching courses there that about 40 to 60% of students taking advanced courses in Spanish and Latin American studies are Dominicans. College education for Dominicans is on the rise statistically. As of 1980, only 3.8% had higher education, 1990, 6.1%, and 2000, 9.1%. Single mothers determine the community's affluence. For example, $12,000 in annual income for couples in Florida versus $8,000 annual income for single moms in Rhode Island. You can see that the women are making less money alone. The poorest communities tend to be matriarchies because men are disproportionately incarcerated. Dominican Americans are now 39.9% of the community. Need to study Dominicans across the USA cities to better understand socioeconomic standards and living. We don't have enough research. The service industry employment capitalizes on the decline in USA's blue-collar jobs from 1999 to 2010, and the Dominicans actually crowd that job market, the service industry. I'm not here for the Dominicans in general. I'm here for my hermanas, las Dominicanas, who are protagonists of migration. Single Dominican women are likelier to migrate alone than other Latinx. This trend shifts in the 2000s when Venezuelans like me flee the humanitarian crisis that Chavismo has become. My mother, like the Dominicanas before her, migrated with myself when I was 12 and my brother, who was 2, utterly alone. What made it bearable was the sisterhood of Latinx community-based organizations in Queens run by women. They helped us with finding healthcare options, going to the doctor, housing, winter coats, and even recommending immigration lawyers. They even helped me get to school. The Latinx accent that I distinguished from a sea of chatter was the characteristic Dominican ya tú sabe. If your Dominican friend says to you, ya tú sabe, you know you're part of the family. Shout out to my tia Mayra at Washington Heights. Yes, I have a Dominican tia. Let's do a sancocho coming up. Yes, para el día de Valentín. Quiero sancocho de caldito de gallina. Ay, tía, tan bueno que lo haces. Dominicanas have developed methods to negotiate Dominican-American identity with remittances, transnational motherhood, new academic research, and policymakers. Dominican Studies Center, for example, in CCNY is a great example. Unlike other Latinx groups, young single Dominicanas migrate alone. They might have family here already, 54% versus 43% of the males. They acquire positions in community-based organizations and initiate political activism. Women don't generally lead, give speeches, or take credit, yet they are the ones who seek permits, network, administer, and mobilize the organizations. The expectations of behind a great man, there's always an even greater woman, it actually kind of holds true here. We would like more women to step to the foreground though. Urban matriarchies are forced to start CBOs from scratch. The institutionalization of the Dominican Republic happens because women transmit cultural values. They are likelier to move to seek better schooling and are responsible for services and protection of their families. Compared to men, they prolong temporary stay in the United States, strengthening the community. For example, Corona Queens, like transnational queens, they are a pan-ethnic CBO movement that started in the 1980s. They negotiate tensions between groups. So imagine kitchen conversations turning into civic organizations and you got it. They tend to use apartments for meetings, events, and fundraising, and even beauty contests. Suddenly, there are Muslim, Jewish, and Buddhist Latinx members who normally adhere to other religious identities now mixing up with the Catholics in New York City. A great example of transnational Dominicanidad femenina is the poet Josefina Baéz in her poem La Cigüapa. I'm reading this because I can totally relate. I'm not far from being a little ciguapita, never mind that I'm Venezuelan. It's part of the immigration experience. The poet Josefina Baéz was born in La Romana, Dominican Republic, and came to New York City when she was 11 years old, like me. She founded the Latinarte, a hombre theater troupe in 1986. She updates the Taíno mythological monster La Ciguapa to fit the immigrant's backwards shoes. I dare you not to feel this poem reverberating through your very soul. If you're Dominican, grab tissues and show this to your friend, girlfriend, mother, tia, abuela, everybody. Just show it to everybody. And tia madrina. Don't forget madrina. Everyone. Here goes. La Ciguapa from 1998. Our deity La Ciguapa arrived in New York too. The subway steps changed her nature. In the ups and downs to and from the train, Her feet became everybody else's in the rush hour crowd. She did not notice the drastic change. This was the first sign of assimilation, a concept not to be understood but experienced. Her lover was not a hunter, as the legend goes. He was a medical doctor by profession, turned taxi driver by necessity. He, the gypsy taxi driver, worked for an uptown car service. In that context, our deity was codified into a mere 10 to 13. It meant companion or wife. We never knew and she never cared. Their love was filled with few words, passionate actions, fast merengues, tasty sancochos, and predictable as well as strictly scheduled trips to la remesa El Sol Sale para Todos. These trips, energized by green dollars, reforested the island. Cigüapa works in a factory making pinkish dolls. Dolls she never had. Dolls dulled by the unique smell of new things. Earning less than a minimum wage, she managed to pay an immigration lawyer she never met. She got her green card. It was not green. Oh, it's never green, that green card. By heart, she knows 33 English words, enough tools for today's communication exchange by hearing. What a triumph! She's going to visit the Dominican Republic the first time in 7 years. She made it! Huge suitcases that she bought from BBB, Bueno, Bonito y Barato, on 14th Street are filled with unthinkable, unnecessary items to be sold at laughable prices. Prices calculated in dollars, paid in pesos. Laughable reality. Her laugh is based on a constant and bitter cry, constant nostalgia, bitter reality, unheard cry. Here, in no man's land, here in no woman's stand, you can become what you are, not by lotto, circumstance, opportunity, luck, unluck, karma. You might forget your divinity, or from your worldly corner become a saint. In conclusion, this episode 28 of Latin American Divas, La Ciguapa, Dominicanas, Diaspora, and Community Development in New York City since 1965, we reviewed 1. Dominican-American history from 1965 to the present in New York City, 2. Dominicanas as protagonists of migration, and 3. A brief reading of Josefina Baéz, La Ciguapa. In this next episode coming up, we were going to study Dominicanidad and lesbian literature in Musings Under the Moon, edited by Jacqueline Jimenez Polanco. Thank you so much, gracias, for taking the time to learn more about Latin American divas right here at Cronista de Indias, where new episodes drop, well, as soon as I finish this season. I have to record at night because no traffic noise outside. As always, a million thanks for viewing, liking, and sharing the episodes. As always, do epic shit, or else you're not doing anything.